In this movie, I'll show you how to gauge the quality of your selection outline using a combination of the Quick Mask mode along with the threshold command. And I'll show you how to increase the quality of your selection using the Select and Mask workspace. Now, this is a little more conceptually challenging than anything we've seen so far, but if you can wrap your head around it, it can make for much higher quality results. So remember that it's the area outside the bird that is selected. And so if I enter the Quick Mask mode, either by clicking on this icon down here at the bottom of the toolbox or just pressing the Q key, then I'm going to see a rubylith overlay covering the deselected portion of the image and no overlay over the selected region. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this creature right here so that we can see we have a few small but obvious problems, such as this dip around the feathers above the beak, along with some of the definition of the feathers along the back of the bird's head. And then if you drop down here to the feet, you can see that they could be in better shape as well. But it's actually much worse than it looks. And so you can get a sense for exactly what's going on by going up to the image menu, choosing adjustments, and choosing threshold, which is going to bring up the very simple threshold dialog box. Now you want to make sure that the preview checkbox is turned on so that you can see what you're doing as you modify this value. Now notice that the central value is labeled threshold level. By default, it's 128, which is the luminance level for medium gray, which means that anything brighter than gray is turning white. That is, it's becoming selected, and anything darker than gray is becoming black. That is to say, it's becoming deselected, which is why we now have these very jagged transitions between the deselected and the selected regions of this image. If you want to get an even clearer sense for what's going on, then you can increase this value to, let's say, 255, which is the luminance level for white, which means that anything that's darker than white, which is basically everything except white, is becoming deselected. And now notice that we have these very bad edges indeed. So in other words, less of the image is selected than we thought. The same holds true for the deselected region. If I go ahead and reduce this value to its absolute minimum, which is now saying everything but black, which has a luminance level of 0, is turning white, so we're now over-selecting the image, and we can once again see that we have some very bad transitions. Now, the irony is that these bad edges are created by turning on the Auto-Enhance checkbox when we were working with the Quick Selection tool. But I assure you, things would be even worse if we had left that checkbox off. Something else I want you to notice, I'll go ahead and zoom out by pressing Control-0 or Command-0 on the Mac. And you can see, incidentally, that we have under-selected the head now. So a lot of what we thought was deselected is actually not quite deselected. The same holds true if I increase the value. We have deselected pixels inside what we thought was the selected region of the image. And this holds true not only along the top of the wing, but up here as well. Notice the top left portion of the image has some deselected pixels here and there. All right, now that we've seen what's good and what's bad about our selection, you don't want to click OK, because that would leave us with some very jagged edges. Instead, you just want to cancel out, because after all, this was merely a fact-finding mission. And then you want to apply a command under the Select menu called Select and Mask. Now, this is a very powerful function inside Photoshop, which is why we'll be visiting it over and over throughout this and future courses. Unfortunately, right now, it's dimmed, and that's because it's not applicable to the Quick Mask mode. Rather, you apply it to selection outlines. So what you want to do is just escape out of the menu and then press the Q key in order to exit the Quick Mask mode and return to your marching ant style selection. And so now what you can do is go up to the Select menu and choose Select and Mask. Now, in the past, this would have brought up a dialog box. Now what it does is it changes out your workspace. So notice that we have new tools over here on the left-hand side of the screen and a big properties panel over here on the right side of the screen. I'm going to switch the view option here, which is set to onion skin by default, to, let's say, overlay. And if you choose overlay, you're going to see a quick mask view of your selection outline. That is, the selected area will be transparent or green because that's the color of the background, and the selected region will have the rubylith overlay. That's not really what I want, though. I want black and white, so I can really see what's going on. And that way the selected area appears white and the deselected area appears black. At which point, I'll just click off that menu to hide it. All right, now I'm going to zoom in and notice these global refinement options right here. This contrast value is analogous to threshold. So if you crank it up all the way, you're going to create crisper transitions along the edges of your selection. And then you have the option of either shifting the edge outward, which is going to add to the selection, as we're seeing right here, or you can shift it inward, which is going to add to the deselected region. And what that's going to allow us to do is to scroll over here and paint away some of this garbage. And we're going to do that using the third tool down, which is the brush tool. And it works just like painting with the brush tool inside the quick mask mode. All right, with this tool selected, I'll right-click inside the image window, and I'm going to take the size value, let's say up to 30 pixels, and then I'll tab to the hardness value and take it up to 100%. You don't need to worry about spacing or the other values for now. And just press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to accept that change. And now just paint along this stuff that you don't want to see deselected. And you can paint along the wing a little bit as well. You don't have to really get in there too far. We're just trying to get rid of the worst of the stuff along that wing. We'll firm up the rest of the edges in future movies. But for now, just do some general cleanup. Don't worry about this stuff at the top of the wing or elsewhere inside the bird. All right, now I'll just go ahead and zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to reset that shift edge value to 0%. And now, in order to smooth out the edges, I'm going to take the smooth value right here, and I'm going to set it to 33%. And that's just because it's easy to type a couple of threes in a row. You really don't want to take it any higher because you'll dull the tip of this beak. All right, now we want to restore the naturalistic edges to our selection. And so I'm going to take this contrast value down from 100%, not all the way to 0, because you can see now it's a little bit too soft, but rather I'm going to set it to 33% as well. And that helps to establish a little bit of firmness along the edge of that selection outline. After which point, I'll just click OK in order to accept that change. And you can see that returns me to the standard marching ants here inside Photoshop. And that's how you gauge the quality of your selection outline using the threshold command, as well as how you enhance the edges of your selection using the Select and Mask workspace.